The sun was beginning to hide among the tall buildings of the city as Anna walked with slow and uncertain steps down the main avenue. Her 10 years of life were marked in every feature of her childlike face, prematurely aged by suffering. Her brown hair, once shiny, now tangled in impossible knots, covered by a thin layer of dust that testified to her days on the streets. People rushed by carrying shopping bags, talking on phones, living their ordinary lives, completely oblivious to the existence of that small figure who moved like a ghost among them. Why do they never look me in the eyes? It's as if I were invisible, as if I didn't really exist. Will someone ever see me? Anna's clothes, too big for her emaciated body, had been found in a donation box left at a church door. The pants needed to be rolled up several times at the waist and still dragged on the ground, accumulating all the dirt from the streets she walked on. The coat, torn at the sleeves, could barely protect her from the cold wind that announced another difficult night. Her feet, wearing mismatched sneakers, were covered with blisters that burned with every step, but she had already learned to ignore that specific pain, like so many others. If I could make a single wish, it would be to have a pair of shoes that didn't hurt my feet. They don't need to be new, they just need to fit properly. A tremor ran through Anna's fragile body, and it wasn't just from the cold. The fever that had begun the night before now burned her skin like fire, leaving her dizzy and confused. For 3 days, she had eaten nothing but fruit peels and food scraps found in restaurant trash bins. Her stomach hurt so much that sometimes she would curl up, hugging her own body, trying to trick her hunger. Her lips were dry and she tried to moisten them with her tongue, but her mouth was as dry as if she had swallowed sand. I need to find water, just a little bit of water. Then I'll look for food, one thing at a time, Anna, one thing at a time. Anna had developed a strategy to survive on the streets. She avoided the most dangerous areas of the city, where older boys might steal the little she managed to gather. She preferred to stay near busy squares, where eventually someone would throw coins in her direction or offer a piece of bread. Her fragile appearance and large brown eyes sometimes aroused compassion, but most days she was just another abandoned child in a city full of them. That afternoon, however, she was too weak to reach her usual spot. Her eyes were heavy, and each step required a tremendous effort. Why is everything spinning? I need to sit down, just for a little while, just until this dizziness passes and I can see properly again. The crowd moved like a tide around Anna, hurried people coming and going, carrying their busy lives. A man spoke loudly on the phone about an important meeting. A woman pulled a well-dressed child by the hand. A group of teenagers laughed loudly, sharing secrets. Everyone had somewhere to go, someone waiting for them, a home to return to. Anna looked at those lives happening around her and felt an infinite distance, as if she were observing everything through a thick glass that separated her from that world of people with purpose. It's strange how I can be in the midst of so many people and feel completely alone. Sometimes I think, if I disappeared at this moment, no one would notice. A lady passed by Anna and glanced quickly in her direction. For a moment, the girl felt a small hope grow, but the woman just clutched her purse tighter against her body and quickened her pace, as if Anna represented some kind of threat. That small gesture hit the girl like a physical blow. She didn't want to scare anyone, didn't want to steal, she just needed help. The tears wanted to come, but she held them back forcefully. She had learned that crying was useless and only made her more thirsty. I'm not a monster, I'm just a girl. Why are people so afraid to look at me? Anna's vision began to blur, small black dots dancing before her eyes. The sound of the street began to seem distant, as if she were submerged in water. Her legs weakened, and before she could hold on to something, her small body collapsed onto the cold sidewalk. The fall wasn't dramatic. It didn't draw attention. It was just the silent collapse of a child who had reached the limit of her strength. She lay there on her side, watching the feet of people who continued passing by, avoiding her as if she were an abandoned object, an obstacle in the way. Maybe it's better this way. Just close my eyes and rest a little. I'm so tired of fighting every day. The minutes dragged on as Anna remained fallen on the sidewalk. Some people looked, but quickly averted their gaze and continued on their way, as if that sight was too disturbing to be processed in their normal days. One man even stopped for a moment, seemed to hesitate as if considering helping, but then looked at his watch and kept walking. Anna observed everything with a strange feeling of disconnection, as if she were watching a scene in which she played no part. I think people don't help because they're afraid to get involved. It's easier to pretend they didn't see, that it's not their problem. The sky was beginning to darken when a pair of well-polished black shoes stopped in front of her. Unlike the others, these shoes didn't swerve, didn't continue walking. They stayed there motionless for long enough for Anna to gather the strength to slightly raise her eyes. It was a middle-aged man, wearing a white coat over formal clothes. He crouched down, reaching Anna's height, his eyes examining the girl with professional concern. "Hello, little one. You're not feeling well, are you? Let me see." The doctor stretched out his arm and touched Anna's forehead with the back of his hand. The touch, although clinical, was the first gentle human contact she had felt in weeks, and it almost made her cry. His hand was cool against the girl's feverish skin, and the contrast was so great that she almost sighed with relief. The man frowned, clearly concerned with what he found. He took Anna's pulse, counting silently for a few seconds while observing the child's general condition. "You have a high fever, and your pulse is racing. When was the last time you ate something?" Anna tried to answer, but her voice came out as a hoarse whisper, almost inaudible. How long had it been since she'd spoken to someone? How long since she'd drunk enough water? She licked her cracked lips, trying again. She didn't want to waste this rare opportunity to receive help. Yesterday, or maybe the day before. I don't remember exactly. The doctor shook his head, showing genuine concern, something Anna rarely saw directed at her. He looked around as if assessing the situation, thinking about how to help. He seemed to be returning home after a long day of work, and probably had his own problems and responsibilities waiting for him. Still, he had stopped to help an unknown child fallen on the sidewalk, something dozens of people had refused to do in the last few minutes. "You need to eat something urgently. You're very weak and have a high fever. This can be dangerous." With decisive movements, the doctor opened his bag and took out a small bottle of water, offering it to Anna. She accepted it with trembling hands and drank eagerly, feeling the cool liquid flow down her parched throat. It was as if every cell in her body absorbed that simple blessing that most people didn't think twice about wasting. While she drank, the man rummaged in his bag, taking out a sandwich wrapped in aluminum foil. "This was going to be my dinner, but I think you need it much more than I do. Here, eat slowly so you don't get sick." The doctor placed the sandwich in Anna's hands and helped her sit up against a store wall. The simple act of sitting caused a wave of dizziness, and she needed to breathe deeply several times until the world stopped spinning around her. The man waited patiently, ensuring she was stable before continuing. "I should take you to a hospital, but I'm late for an emergency. There's a shelter for children 3 blocks from here on Acacia Street. They can take care of you." Anna nodded, knowing she would never go there. She had been in shelters before, and the experiences were rarely good. Older children who stole from the younger ones, overworked staff who had no time or energy to really take care of everyone, strict rules that seemed to exist only to punish. But she said none of this to the doctor. He was helping and she didn't want to seem ungrateful. "Thank you, sir, I'll try to go there when I feel better." The doctor seemed to want to say something else, perhaps offer more help, but his phone rang insistently. He took it out of his pocket, looked at the screen, and his expression changed, as if being pulled back into the world of responsibilities and emergencies. He gave Anna one last concerned look, clearly hesitating between his professional duty elsewhere and the sick child in front of him. "I need to go now. Take care, little one. Eat slowly and seek help. Your fever needs to be treated." With these words, the doctor stood up and left, soon getting lost in the crowd that continued to flow down the avenue. Anna watched him leave with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. I knew he would probably forget her as soon as he turned the corner. Just another sad story to tell colleagues during coffee, perhaps. For her, however, that brief encounter had been a ray of light in days of complete darkness. He stopped to help me when nobody else did. Maybe there are still good people in the world. Carefully, Anna unwrapped the sandwich, revealing whole wheat bread filled with cheese, ham, and fresh lettuce. The aroma made her stomach painfully growl, reminding her of how hungry she was. She took a small bite, savoring each texture and flavor as if it were the most sophisticated meal in the world. The soft bread, the creamy cheese, even the crispy lettuce seemed like an indescribable luxury after days of eating scraps. She chewed slowly, exactly as the doctor had recommended, allowing her fragile stomach to get used again to the sensation of receiving food. It's so good. I can't eat it all at once. I'll save some for later. You never know when I'll get food again. While savoring each precious bite, Anna observed the movement around her. The flow of people was beginning to diminish as the workday ended and night approached. Soon the streets would be less populated, which was both good and bad. Fewer people to ignore her, but also less protection against the dangers that emerged from the shadows. The city had two faces, and Anna knew both well. The night is always scarier. It's when good people go home and the others appear. It was then that Anna noticed a movement in her peripheral vision. Turning her head slightly, she saw a boy even smaller than her, perhaps 5 years old, watching her fixedly from across the sidewalk. Like her, his clothes were dirty and torn, his hair tangled, his bare feet covered with the dirt of the streets. But it was his eyes that captured Anna's attention, large, dark, and fixed on the sandwich in her hands, with an expression of hunger so intense it bordered on desperation. He looks even hungrier than I was. How does someone so small manage to survive alone on these streets? The boy didn't approach, maintaining a safe distance like a wild animal accustomed to being shooed away. He just watched, completely focused on the food, probably fearing that if he made any sudden movement, Anna would put the sandwich away or push him away. There was an impressive discipline in that immobility, the kind of patience that only extreme hunger can teach. He must be as hungry as I was, maybe more, he's so small. Anna looked at the sandwich in her hands. She had already eaten almost half, enough to appease the worst part of her hunger. There was still a generous piece left, which she intended to save for later for the cold night approaching. That piece represented security, the certainty that she would have something to eat when hunger returned. In her life on the streets, few things were as valuable as guaranteed food. If I give it to him, I'll have nothing later. But look how thin he is. Looks like he might faint at any moment. A silent battle was happening inside Anna, between the survival instinct harshly learned on the streets and something deeper, more fundamental to her nature. The empathy that, despite everything she had been through, had not yet been completely crushed by the hardness of life. She herself knew what that devouring hunger was like, that sensation that one's own body was consuming itself from within. He's smaller than me. It must be harder for him to find food, and it's so cold today. The decision came not as a great heroic moment, but as a simple recognition of shared humanity. Anna looked at the sandwich, at the boy, and then back at the food in her hands. With a sigh that carried the weight of her choice, she extended her arm toward the small observer, offering the rest of her precious sandwich. "Hey, do you want it? You can take it. There's still plenty." The boy initially didn't move, as if he didn't believe what he was seeing or suspected some kind of trick. His eyes quickly alternated between Anna's face and the extended sandwich, evaluating if the offer was genuine. Distrust was a survival tool on the streets, and even someone so young had already learned the hard way that rarely was something offered without a hidden price. "It's okay. I won't take it back. It's yours if you want it. I've already eaten some." Slowly, hesitantly, the boy began to approach. Each step was careful, calculated, ready to retreat at the slightest sign of danger. Anna kept her arm extended, her face open and gentle, trying to appear as unthreatening as possible. When he finally came close enough, the boy stretched out his small, dirty hand, taking the sandwich in a quick, almost furtive movement. "Eat slowly so you don't get sick. Your stomach might hurt if you eat too quickly." The boy didn't respond. With the precious food secure in his hands, he took a few steps backward, never taking his eyes off Anna as if fearing she might change her mind. Then, without any word of thanks, he turned and ran away, disappearing among the people who were still moving along the avenue. Anna watched him leave, feeling a strange mixture of emotions. A bit of regret for the lost food, but mostly a surprising tranquility, as if she had done exactly what she should have done. "I had someone who stopped to help me today. Maybe I have to do the same for others when I can." As the afternoon gave way to evening, the sky began to darken not just from the late hour, but also from heavy clouds that were forming. The air grew colder, heavy with the promise of rain. Anna huddled against the wall, pulling the torn coat tighter around her body, trying to conserve any warmth she could. Her usual refuge was about 20 minutes' walk from there, a gap between two buildings where there was a vent that released warm air, creating a small oasis of heat on cold nights. I need to get there before it starts raining. If I get wet with this fever, I'll get much worse. Anna tried to stand up, but her legs seemed made of rubber, giving way under her weight. The fever, far from improving, seemed to have worsened. The little food she had consumed gave her some energy, but not enough to fight the infection that was clearly spreading through her body. Her head throbbed, and each movement made the world spin nauseously. She leaned against the wall, breathing deeply, trying to gather strength for the walk to her improvised shelter. I'll count to 3 and get up. 1, 2, 3. With a colossal effort, Anna managed to stand, although her legs dangerously trembled. Each step was a small victory against the body that seemed determined to fail. She moved forward slowly, occasionally stopping to lean on poles or walls when the dizziness became unbearable. People were now even fewer on the streets, and those who passed by seemed even more determined to ignore her existence. One step at a time. Don't think about how far there is to go, just the next step, then the next one and the next. The wind grew stronger, bringing the first drops of rain, thin and icy against Anna's hot skin. The temperature contrast was shocking, like small ice needles piercing her feverish skin. She looked up at the increasingly dark sky, feeling growing despair. She wouldn't be able to reach her shelter in time, not in this state. The rain would soon transform into a downpour, and she would be completely exposed. Why today, the very day I'm sick, without strength? It's not fair. The drops began to fall with more intensity, and Anna desperately searched for somewhere to take shelter. She spotted an awning of a closed shop a few meters ahead and headed there with renewed determination from the urgency. Each step was a battle against gravity and against her own weakness, but the prospect of temporary shelter from the rain gave her strength to continue. Just a little more, just to that covering. I can rest there until the rain passes. When she finally reached the awning, Anna let herself slide down the wall until she sat on the ground, completely exhausted from the effort. The fever created a bizarre contrast. Inside, her body burned. Outside, she was frozen to the core. Anna hugged her own knees, trying to create a small island of warmth, but it was useless. The humidity and wind seemed determined to steal any heat her sick body could generate. She looked at the street, now almost deserted except for a few people running to escape the rain, all with somewhere to go, some warm and dry refuge waiting for them. Will I ever have a place to call home again? A dry, warm place, with people who care if I arrive wet from the rain? The rain intensified, transforming into a real downpour. The heavy drops ricocheted off the asphalt, creating a curtain of water that isolated Anna even more from the rest of the world. Cars passed by, throwing fans of dirty water, their lights creating ghostly reflections in the puddles that were quickly forming. The city seemed like a completely different place under the rain, more hostile, colder, more indifferent to the suffering of a lone child. If only I had saved a piece of that sandwich. Maybe it would give me strength to hold on until tomorrow. The night advanced relentlessly, bringing with it a darkness that was only partially dispelled by the city lights. The cold intensified as the temperature dropped, and the rain showed no signs of letting up. Hannah struggled to keep her eyes open, to continue breathing through the growing weight in her chest. Each breath was more difficult than the previous one. Each beat of her heart seemed to demand a greater effort. Tomorrow will be better. It's always like that. I just need to hold on until tomorrow. However, when the first lightning illuminated the sky, followed seconds later by the deafening thunder that seemed to make the air itself vibrate, Anna curled up even more, the instinctive fear of the storm adding to all the other fears she already carried. The brief and intense flash of lightning had revealed completely flooded streets, transformed into temporary rivers carrying garbage and debris. Her small shelter under the awning seemed increasingly fragile against nature's growing fury. What if the water rises to here? Where will I go? I don't have the strength to look for another place. Another lightning, another thunder, closer this time. The storm was directly over the city now, unleashing all its fury. Anna could feel the vibration of thunder in her chest, mixing with the pain of coughing and the growing pressure that made breathing difficult. The rain intensified even more, transforming into solid curtains of water that the wind occasionally hurled into her precarious shelter, soaking her even further. "I won't make it. Not like this. Not alone." It was then that weakness finally won. With a trembling sigh, Anna yielded to exhaustion, her eyes closing against her will. Her small body slid down the wall until she lay on her side on the cold, damp sidewalk. Consciousness slowly slipped away, like water between fingers, taking with it the pain, the cold, the fear. Her last conscious thought was a simple, desperate prayer directed to whoever might hear. "Please, someone help me. I don't want to die alone in the rain." A cold raindrop fell directly on Anna's face, making her wake with a start. For a moment she didn't know where she was, the fever still clouding her consciousness. The grey morning sky revealed that she had survived the night, although her aching, soaked body questioned whether this could be called luck. The storm had passed, but left behind a persistent drizzle that continued to fall, keeping her clothes damp and her body shivering. Anna blinked several times, trying to focus her vision while struggling to sit up against the wall. "I'm alive. I didn't think I'd see another dawn. But now what? I'm even worse than yesterday." Hunger had transformed into an acute pain, as if something was tearing her stomach from the inside. The fever, far from subsiding, seemed even more intense, leaving her alternating between violent chills and suffocating waves of heat. Anna looked around, trying to orient herself. The streets were beginning to come alive again, with the first people heading to their jobs, walking hurriedly under umbrellas, their lives continuing as if nothing had happened, as if a child hadn't almost died of cold and hunger just a few meters away from them. "Why do I feel so invisible to everyone? It's as if I were a ghost walking among living people." With an effort that seemed superhuman, Anna managed to stand up, leaning heavily against the wall. Her legs wobbled, threatening to give way at any moment, and her head spun with the simple act of standing. The cough that had emerged the night before was now deeper, more painful, making her chest burn with each spasm. She knew she needed to find food and shelter soon, or she wouldn't be able to resist much longer. The problem was where to go, what to do, when each step required a monumental effort. As she walked with difficulty, the smell was the first sign. A rich and complex aroma of food being prepared, so powerful that it made Anna's stomach painfully twist, reminding her that it had been empty for a long time. Her body reacted instinctively, turning toward that irresistible call. A few meters ahead, at the corner of a tree-lined street, was the source of that torment. An elegant restaurant with tables arranged under an awning in the outdoor area, protected from the drizzle. The name of the establishment, engraved in golden letters above the main door, suggested exclusivity and inaccessible prices. It must be the type of place where a meal costs more than I've ever had in my life. But maybe they throw away things that can still be eaten. Driven by desperate hope, Anna approached the restaurant, observing the movement of employees preparing the place for the day. Waiters arranged tables with impeccable white tablecloths, shining cutlery and crystal glasses that sparkled even under the weak light of that rainy morning. And the man in a dark suit, who appeared to be in charge, was carefully organizing a reservation list at a small table near the entrance. His air of authority was intimidating, but Anna's hunger was stronger than her fear. "The worst they can do is send me away. I'm used to that, and I need to try." Taking a deep breath to gather courage, Anna approached the man. Her soaked clothes left a trail of water wherever she walked, creating a shocking contrast with the immaculate elegance of the environment. The man noticed her before she even spoke, his face transforming into a mask of barely disguised disgust. Even so, Anna continued advancing until she stood before him, trembling both from fever and nervousness. "Please," her voice came out as a hoarse whisper, forcing her to try again. "I can clean the floor or tables in exchange for a little food." "I'm very hungry." The maitre d' examined Anna from top to bottom, as if assessing a particularly unpleasant object that had appeared in his path. His gaze lingered on her wet and dirty clothes, tangled hair, feet wearing mismatched sneakers, and the sickly paleness of her childlike face. The expression of disgust intensified, transforming into something close to repulsion. "Go away. You're scaring our customers with that appearance. This is a first-class establishment, not a charity center." The words hit Anna like a physical blow, but she didn't move. Hunger and desperation were stronger than humiliation. She was accustomed to rejections, closed doors, looks of disgust. What she couldn't bear was going another day without food, feeling her body weaken more and more, surrendering to the illness growing in her chest. "Please, I'll do any work. I can stay where nobody sees me. I just need a little food, anything will do." Anna's persistence seemed to only irritate the maitre d' further, who took a step toward her with a threatening expression. At that moment, something inside her gave way, not from fear but from pure physical exhaustion. Her legs finally gave up supporting her, and she fell to her knees on the polished floor of the restaurant entrance. The fall wasn't intentional, but in that position she appeared to be begging, pleading for help. "I'm so hungry. I can clean everything, I won't bother anyone. I just need a little food so I don't die." The scene attracted the attention of nearby staff and some early customers already occupying tables in the outdoor area. Curious glances turned to the small kneeling figure, creating exactly the kind of spectacle the maitre d' wanted to avoid. His face contorted into an expression of contained fury as he looked around, aware of the negative impression the situation could cause the establishment. "This is absurd. Get her up and take her away from here before she ruins our breakfast." Anna, already on the ground, did what her survival instincts told her. She began to clean. Her small hands, already calloused from life on the streets, scrubbed the polished stone floor in circular movements, as if demonstrating her worth, her usefulness. She had no cloth or water, just her bare palms against the cold floor. But the action had a clear purpose, to show she was willing to work, that she wasn't just a beggar. "See, I can make everything clean. I can work all day just for one plate. It doesn't need to be full, just enough." One of the waiters, a young man who observed the scene with a conflicted expression, approached the maitre d' and said something in a low voice. The man seemed to consider for a moment, his eyes moving between Anna, still desperately scrubbing the floor, and the customers watching the situation with expressions ranging from discomfort to curiosity. Finally, he made an abrupt gesture of reluctant agreement. "This is ridiculous, but if you keep her out of sight, I don't want problems with management because of this." The young waiter quickly moved away and returned moments later with a bucket of grey water, obviously already used to clean other areas, and an old brush with hard, worn bristles. Kneeling quickly beside Anna, he placed the items near her and whispered, so that only she could hear, "Clean the outdoor area, away from the main tables. If you do a good job, I'll save some leftovers for you when the breakfast shift ends. But don't irritate the maitre d' or the customers." A spark of hope lit up in Anna's exhausted gaze. It was a chance, however small, and she would grab it with all the strength she had left. With hands trembling from fever and weakness, she took the brush and dipped it in the bucket, immediately beginning to scrub the floor with a vigor that her fragile body could barely sustain. "Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll make it so clean you'll be able to see your reflections on the floor. You won't regret it." The young waiter merely nodded briefly before returning to his duties, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but unable to completely ignore the girl's evident suffering. Anna dragged the bucket to the indicated area, keeping herself crouched and trying to be as invisible as possible. Each movement was painful, each breath an effort against the weight she felt in her chest, but the promise of food was a powerful motivator. "I just need to hold on for a few more hours. If I survived last night, I can survive this too." As the morning progressed, the restaurant began to get busier. Well-dressed customers arrived for their business breakfasts or social meetings, occupying more and more tables. Anna continued her meticulous work, advancing inch by inch, cleaning with dedication each stain, each encrusted dirt between the stones of the floor. The water in the bucket soon turned completely black, but she didn't dare ask to change it, fearing that this might irritate the maitre d' and result in her expulsion. "If I continue at this pace, maybe I'll finish before lunch. I need to show that I'm efficient, that I deserve those leftovers." While working, Anna could hear fragments of conversations coming from nearby tables, discussions about investments, gossip about unknown people, complaints about problems that to her seemed like luxuries. A man complained that his beach house needed expensive renovations. A woman lamented that her new car wasn't the exact color she had ordered. These glimpses of a world so different from hers were almost surreal, as if she were hearing stories from another planet. What would it be like to have problems like that? To worry about the color of a car when I worry if I'll wake up tomorrow. At one of the tables closest to the area Anna was cleaning, sat a middle-aged man, wearing an impeccably cut suit that seemed to cost more than she would ever see in her entire life. His face displayed that particular expression of someone accustomed to being obeyed instantly, to having his wishes fulfilled without question. He spoke loudly on the phone about some important business, gesturing with one hand while the other held a coffee cup. "I don't care what they think. Tell them the deadline is final, and if they can't meet it, I'll find someone who can. I don't have time for incompetence." The man continued his phone conversation while the waiter served his elaborate breakfast. Eggs prepared in some sophisticated way, breads still steaming, fresh fruits cut in precise shapes. The aroma emanating from that single plate was so intense that Anna felt her stomach painfully twist, reminding her that there had been nothing in it for more than a day. She tried not to look, concentrating on her work, but it was almost impossible to ignore that tempting sight just a few meters away. Just a small piece of that bread would already be an entire meal for me. He's not even going to eat it all, I'm sure. For an unfortunate moment, the rich man caught Anna's hungry look toward his table. His eyes narrowed dangerously, observing with growing irritation the small, dirty figure kneeling near his area. He abruptly ended his call and made an imperious gesture to summon the maitre d', who immediately approached with a solicitous expression. "What is the meaning of this? Why is there a filthy beggar scrubbing the floor near my table while I'm trying to enjoy my breakfast?" The elevated tone attracted the attention of other customers, who now openly observed the scene. Anna froze, the brush still in her hand, feeling the blood drain from her already pale face. The maitre d' began to apologize profusely, promising to resolve the situation immediately, but the rich man was not satisfied. With an agile movement for someone of his age and build, he stood up and walked directly to Anna, stopping a few steps away. What an absurdity to allow this filthy beggar here. I'm trying to enjoy my meal in peace, and I'm forced to endure this deplorable sight. Anna instinctively shrank back, expecting the blow that frequently followed harsh words in the streets. But the man didn't touch her. He did something that, in a way, was even more humiliating. With a deliberate movement, he kicked the bucket of dirty water, spilling its dark contents over Anna. The icy, filthy water completely soaked her already damp clothes, making her gasp with shock. Some splashes also hit the man himself, slightly staining the hem of his expensive pants, which only served to increase his fury. This is a luxury restaurant, not a shelter for vagrants. Nobody wants to see this while eating. Now look what you've done to my clothes. A heavy silence fell over the outdoor area of the restaurant. The customers watched the scene with expressions ranging from shock to discomfort, and what was perhaps worse, entertainment, as if they were witnessing an especially unpleasant performance. The waiters stood with trays in their hands, uncertain how to react. The maitre d' seemed torn between appeasing his important customer and dealing with the increasingly out-of-control situation. "Sir, please calm down. We will remove the girl immediately and arrange to have your clothes cleaned. We offer 1,000 apologies for the inconvenience." Anna remained on the floor, soaked with dirty water, silent tears beginning to stream down her feverish face. They weren't tears of self-pity. She had moved past that point long ago. They were tears of frustration, of physical and emotional exhaustion, of seeing her only chance to get food disappear before her eyes. Even so, with a determination that defied her condition, she picked up the brush that had fallen beside her, and ignoring the fact that there was no more water in the bucket, continued to scrub the floor. "If I stop now, they'll send me away with nothing. I have to show that I can still work, that I deserve those leftovers. I just need to hold on a little longer." The rich man watched in disbelief as Anna, drenched and trembling, continued her work as if nothing had happened. That silent persistence seemed to irritate him even more, as if the girl's refusal to be completely humiliated was a personal challenge. He opened his mouth to hurl another insult when the sound of tires at the restaurant entrance drew everyone's attention. "Who dares to interrupt my speech? I was about to put this insolent girl in her proper place." An elegant black limousine stopped smoothly in front of the restaurant, its polished metal gleaming even under the weak light of that rainy morning. The driver, impeccably dressed, quickly got out to open the rear door. There was a moment of collective anticipation as everyone present, staff, customers, and even Anna, watched to see who would emerge from that mobile symbol of power and wealth. It must be someone very important to cause such silence. Perhaps a politician or a celebrity. From the limousine stepped a tall, elegant man wearing a suit that made the angry customers look ordinary in comparison. It wasn't just the obvious quality of the fabric or the perfect cut. It was the way he wore it, with the naturalness of someone born into a golden cradle who had never known any other reality. His face, though marked by years, maintained an expression of calm dignity that emanated authority without needing to demonstrate it openly. Finally, a place that seems to serve a decent breakfast in this city. I hope the food is as good as I've been told. The newcomer closed his umbrella and handed it to the driver, who returned to the vehicle. As he walked toward the restaurant entrance, his perceptive eyes caught the unusual scene unfolding in the outdoor area. The soaked girl still scrubbing the floor, the rich man standing beside her with a furious expression, the customers and staff observing with varying degrees of discomfort. Something in his gaze changed, a spark of interest replacing the neutral expression. It seems I've arrived at an interesting moment. What exactly is happening here? Instead of entering the restaurant directly, the billionaire, whom Anna would later discover was named Charles, diverted his path, approaching the scene with slow, deliberate steps. The maitre d', immediately recognizing the prominent figure, rushed toward him with an expression mixing panic and adulation. But the newcomer completely ignored him, his eyes now fixed on the small figure kneeling on the wet floor. This doesn't seem right. A child in these conditions working like this. Anna hadn't noticed the arrival of the limousine or Charles's approach. She continued her mechanical work, each movement weaker than the previous one, the brush occasionally slipping from her trembling fingers. She was at the limit of her strength, maintained only by the iron determination not to give up on that promise of food. She only raised her eyes when a shadow fell over her, blocking the weak daylight. Are they going to throw me out now? Please, not before I finish. I really need that food. The rich man, who seconds before had seemed ready to continue his tirade against Anna, now displayed a dramatic change in his behavior. His face, previously contorted with rage, now tried to force a cordial smile. His body, previously leaning threateningly over the girl, now straightened into an almost submissive posture. It was like watching a chameleon changing color, a transformation as sudden as it was transparent in its falsity. Ah, what an unexpected pleasure. I didn't know you frequented this establishment. I was just explaining to this child that there are appropriate places for people in your situation. Charles did not answer immediately. His eyes moved from the soaked and trembling girl to the overturned bucket, to the stains on the rich man's pants, to the guilty expressions of the staff. It was as if he was piecing together a puzzle in his mind, placing each piece in its proper place to form a complete picture of what had happened. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, controlled, but loaded with unquestionable authority. You need not continue your explanation. I believe I understand the situation perfectly. The maitre d' finally managed to position himself next to Charles, speaking in a hurried and nervous tone. Sir, it is an honor to receive you in our establishment. We have your preferred table prepared, away from this unfortunate confusion. Please allow me to escort you. But Charles continued ignoring everyone except Anna. His eyes showed no disgust or repulsion like the others, but something more complex, a mixture of compassion and cold determination that made the rich man instinctively step back. The girl, feeling the intensity of that gaze, finally stopped her frantic work and raised her face to meet the newcomer's eyes. Why is he looking at me like that? He doesn't seem angry, but it's not pity either. What does he want? The moment hung in the air like a crystal about to shatter. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. Customers at nearby tables observed the scene with renewed interest, instinctively feeling they were about to witness something significant. The rich man shifted his weight from one foot to the other, clearly uncomfortable under the billionaire's impassive gaze. The maitre d' seemed on the verge of a nervous breakdown. What is he going to do? Please don't let it be worse than it already is. I can't lose the chance of that food, not when I've come so far." The silence enveloping the scene was broken when Charles finally stepped forward, moving closer to Anna. His movement was deliberate, calm, but charged with a natural authority that made everyone around back away slightly. He completely ignored the maitre d's anxious bows, his eyes remaining fixed only on the small figure kneeling on the wet floor. "My name is Charles," he said, bending slightly to be closer to Anna's height. "You seem to be shivering. Do you have a fever, little one? Are you hungry?" he asked, and without waiting for an answer, with a fluid movement that revealed years of cultivated elegance, Charles removed his fine cashmere coat and gently placed it over the girl's trembling shoulders. The weight of the luxurious fabric was comforting, wrapping Anna like a distant embrace, the first genuinely kind gesture she had received in a very long time. "This ends now," said Charles, his voice soft but loaded with unquestionable firmness. "No one should treat another human being this way, much less a child." The maître d', realizing that something unprecedented was happening in his establishment, intensified his attempts to intervene, positioning himself between Charles and the rich man with a nervous smile. His hands gestured frantically as he tried to regain control of the situation, away from the curious gazes of other customers. "Mr. Charles, it is an inestimable honor to receive you. Perhaps we can discuss any problem in my office with all the privacy you deserve." Charles ignored the maître d' as if he were completely invisible, a gesture that carried more contempt than any word could express. With deliberate movements, he removed his phone from his pocket and dialed a number, maintaining his compassionate gaze on the girl while waiting for someone to answer. "James, I need you to come immediately to the Belle Epoque restaurant, and I want you to prepare some documentation for me. I'll send you everything by message, and come quickly," he said before handling the phone, typing something rapidly on the screen, as if he were very accustomed to communicating through his smartphone. Anna observed everything with a mixture of confusion and cautious hope. No one had ever stood up for her like this before, and certainly not someone so obviously powerful. The coat on her shoulders was heavy and warm, so different from the damp rags she wore that the sensation was almost overwhelming. "Why is he helping me? Nobody ever cared before. Rich people usually pretend I don't exist." The minutes that followed seemed stretched, as if time were moving at a different speed. Customers at nearby tables made no effort to disguise that they were watching the drama unfold. The rich man alternated between trying to justify his actions and trying to establish some kind of camaraderie with Charles. "You need to understand, my dear Charles, these people need to learn their place. Firmness is the only language they understand." A black limousine silently parked in front of the restaurant, and from it emerged a middle-aged man wearing a conservative suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He handed the briefcase to Charles and positioned himself discreetly by his side. Charles opened the briefcase and quickly examined its contents, nodding with approval. "Everything is in order. You've always been extremely efficient, James. This will make things much easier." With the briefcase open on a nearby table, Charles signed several documents with quick, decisive movements. With each signature, the maître d' grew paler, as if beginning to comprehend the scope of what was happening. The rich man, on the other hand, seemed increasingly anxious, a forced smile frozen on his face. "These are just some pending business matters. Fortunately, circumstances have created a perfect opportunity to resolve them." After finishing signing the documents, Charles returned them to his assistant and turned to face the small crowd that had formed around him. His face, normally composed during million-dollar negotiations, now displayed cold determination. When he spoke, his voice was clear and strong, projected so everyone could hear without difficulty. "I have just purchased this establishment," announced Charles, causing a murmur of astonishment among those present. "And my first order as the owner is for you to leave immediately." Charles's finger pointed directly at the rich man, who now seemed to have completely lost his previous arrogance. His face went through a quick sequence of emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, and finally a resigned understanding of the power he was facing. When a person reveals who they really are, we must pay attention. Your actions have demonstrated your character with perfect clarity. The maître d', understanding that his position was also in danger, began a series of elaborate apologies. Charles observed him with patience, and when the maître d' finally stopped to breathe, He simply shook his head, dismissing the explanations as irrelevant. You are also dismissed, as is any employee who participated in humiliating this child. This establishment will have new standards from now on. Some employees exchanged anxious glances, clearly trying to calculate their own participation in the events. The young waiter who had offered the bucket and brush to Anna stepped forward, looking nervous but determined. Charles raised his hand in a reassuring gesture. His perceptive eyes had already noticed the small act of kindness. Those who showed compassion have nothing to fear. In fact, they will be valued under the new management. With the rich man and the maître d' reluctantly leaving the restaurant, Charles finally turned toward the kitchen. The chef, who had observed the entire situation from the doorway, seemed to be the only high-ranking employee who didn't show absolute panic. Chef, I would like you to prepare your best dishes. This young lady will be my special guest today and deserves the best your kitchen can offer. The chef, a man with a severe appearance but gentle eyes, nodded with professional seriousness. There was something in his look suggesting that preparing a meal for a hungry child gave him more pleasure than serving dozens of wealthy clients. It will be my pleasure, sir. We have fresh ingredients that arrived this morning. I will prepare something unforgettable for the little guest. Charles then turned to Anna, who still remained on the floor, observing everything with wide eyes. What's your name, little one? He asked, as the girl tried to contain her tears of emotion. My name is Anna, sir, she replied. Her entire life on the streets had taught her that unexpected kindness usually came with a price. Charles noticed her hesitation and knelt again, getting to her eye level. Anna, I know it's difficult to trust people after everything you've been through, but I promise you're safe now. A staff member approached timidly, encouraged by the chef. She was a young woman with a gentle expression, perhaps the only one among the employees who seemed genuinely happy with the turn of events. Sir, if I may, I can help the little one clean up and change clothes. We have an employee locker room with a shower, and I believe I can find something appropriate for her to wear. Charles nodded with approval, and the employee extended her hand to Anna, who accepted it after a moment of hesitation. As the employee led Anna to the interior of the restaurant, Charles took the opportunity to guide his assistant on the next steps: legal arrangements, contacts with social services, preparations for adequate accommodations. I want everything done properly, James. This child has already suffered enough from neglect. I will not allow bureaucracies to cause more suffering. The restaurant was quickly reorganized. The most beautiful table, located near a window overlooking a small garden, was prepared with special care. White linen tablecloths, polished silver cutlery, fine china and delicate crystal, everything arranged with an elegance that didn't seem ostentatious but welcoming. I want her to feel special, not intimidated. When Anna finally returned, the transformation was almost miraculous. Her hair, now clean and combed, revealed a golden brown shade previously hidden beneath layers of dirt. Her cheeks, though still too thin, had a slight blush. She wore simple but clean clothes that, although too large, were carefully adjusted to better fit her small frame. But most remarkable was the change in her eyes, still cautious, but now with a glimmer of hope. Am I really clean? I barely recognize myself without all that dirt. It feels like I'm dreaming. Charles stood up when Anna approached, a gesture of respect he normally reserved for dignitaries. He guided her to the prepared table and pulled out the chair for her to sit, treating her with the same deference he would show to any important guest. This place is for important people. I never thought I'd be sitting at a table like this. The dishes began to arrive, each one proudly presented. There was a velvety cream soup, a main course with vibrant colors and varied textures, freshly baked bread still warm accompanied by fresh butter. Each element was a culinary work of art, prepared with meticulous attention. I've never seen such beautiful food in my life. It seems wrong to even touch it, as if it would ruin the painting. Charles watched with satisfaction as Anna tasted each item, her expression varying between intense concentration and pure delight. It was evident that she tried to eat elegantly, imitating Charles's movements with the cutlery. But years of hunger made it difficult to maintain composure, faced with such abundance. Eat at your own pace, Anna. The food won't disappear, and we can order more if you wish. Between courses, Charles began to ask gentle questions, always leaving space for Anna to answer only what she felt comfortable sharing. Anna, initially hesitant, gradually began to open up, first with short answers and finally with complete stories. "I don't like talking about it much, but I think you deserve to know after all you've done for me." With a weak voice and occasionally broken speech, Anna told how she lost her parents in an accident 2 years before. She described the difficult months when she was sent to live with distant relatives who saw her as an unwanted burden. She spoke about the nights she went to bed hungry because there wasn't enough food, although the other family members always seemed well fed. "They said I cost too much, that they hadn't asked for this responsibility. I thought it would be easier for everyone if I wasn't there." Charles listened attentively, his face a mask of composure that only occasionally revealed flashes of the indignation he felt. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer empty platitudes or expressions of pity. He just listened, giving her the rare gift of being truly heard. "Since then, I've slept where I can and eaten what I find. This is the first real meal I've had in so long I can't even remember." Something changed in Charles's face, a vulnerability rarely seen in the man who commanded a business empire with relentless efficiency. He began to tell his own story, how he too was orphaned as a child, in different but equally painful circumstances. He spoke about the fear and loneliness, feelings he could still vividly recall. "I also knew hunger and cold, Anna. The difference is that I was lucky. A family found me and decided to give me a chance." Charles described how he was adopted by a couple who, although not rich, had an abundance of love and principles. He talked about how they insisted on his education, sacrificing personal comforts to ensure he had opportunities. He told about the values that were transmitted to him and how he promised to use his wealth not just to accumulate more, but to create opportunities for others. "Sometimes, all we need is a chance, Anna. Someone who believes in us when we can't even believe in ourselves." Anna listened with growing fascination, her eyes never leaving Charles's face. There was something deeply comforting in discovering that this man, so powerful and respected, genuinely understood what it meant to have nothing. "I never imagined someone so important could understand what it's like. People usually look right through me, as if I were invisible." As the meal came to an end, Charles observed the girl with growing certainty about what he needed to do. It wasn't an impulsive decision. Something inside him had recognized this possibility from the moment he saw Anna kneeling on the floor, refusing to give up. "Anna, I have an important question to ask you. You can think carefully before answering." Anna carefully placed her spoon beside her dessert plate, her expression becoming serious at Charles' tone. She had learned on the streets to be alert when adults wanted to ask important questions. It usually meant trouble. But something about Charles inspired a confidence she had never felt before. "You can ask. I promise to answer truthfully, as you did with me." Charles leaned slightly forward, his gentle eyes fixed on Anna's, conveying sincerity and genuine emotion. His voice, normally controlled and modulated for meeting rooms, now carried an almost palpable vulnerability. What he was about to propose wasn't a business transaction or an act of charity. It was a decision that would irrevocably change the course of 2 lives. "Would you like to have a family again, Anna? I would love to adopt you as my daughter. I want to be kind to you, just as my adoptive parents were to me." The question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibilities and promises. Anna's face registered a series of emotions in rapid succession: shock, disbelief, cautious hope, and finally, an intense joy that seemed to illuminate her entire presence. Tears began to stream freely down her cheeks, but unlike the silent tears she had shed while scrubbing the floor, these were of pure joy. Can I really have a real home? It's not a dream or a cruel joke." Charles extended his hand across the table, offering it to Anna in a gesture that symbolized much more than simple physical contact. It was the offer of a connection, of a commitment, of a shared future. Hannah looked at that hand for a moment, as if she couldn't believe the choice being offered to her. Then, slowly, with a decision that seemed to contain all the courage she had accumulated in her years of survival on the streets, she placed her small hand in his and nodded affirmatively. Yes, please. I would like that very much." A genuine smile illuminated Charles's face, completely transforming his normally serious features. In that moment, he wasn't the powerful billionaire, the business titan. He was simply a man finding purpose and family after years of material success that had never completely filled the void left by his own turbulent childhood. "Then it's decided. From today you have a home, Anna, and I have a daughter." After settling all the initial details with his assistant, who was already making calls to initiate the legal procedures necessary for the adoption, Charles stood up and offered his hand to Anna. Together, they walked toward the restaurant exit, where the limousine was waiting to take them to a new shared life. "Let's go home, Anna. There's a lot we need to learn about each other." When they were about to enter the vehicle, Anna suddenly stopped, her small body tensing as if she had remembered something important. Her eyes wandered back to the restaurant and then to the streets beyond it, a look that contained a concern that went beyond her own situation. Charles noticed the immediate change in her posture and knelt again, placing himself at her eye level. "What is it, Anna? Are you worried about something?" Anna hesitated, slightly biting her lower lip, as if carefully weighing her words. When she finally spoke, her voice was low but firm, carrying a wisdom and compassion that seemed far beyond her few years. "There are others like me," she answered quietly, her eyes meeting Charles's with surprising intensity. "Many others who need help, who are starving. When I managed to get food, I also tried to help them. But there are so many children alone, hungry, with no one who cares." Charles looked thoughtfully at the girl he had just adopted, an idea forming clearly in his mind. In Anna, he wasn't just finding a daughter, but also a renewed purpose for his vast fortune and influence. "You're right, Anna. And perhaps together we can do something about it." Months later, the autumn sun bathed the expansive garden of Charles's mansion with golden light. Sitting on a bench under a leafy tree, Anna calmly observed the movement of other children playing on the freshly cut grass. Her hair, now long and shiny, was tied in a carefully made braid. The simple but elegant clothes had definitely replaced the rags of the past, and her face, once pale and marked by hunger, now displayed the healthy glow of recovered childhood. "Who would have thought that in just 1 year my life would change so much? Sometimes I still wake up afraid that it was all a dream." The sound of footsteps on the grass announced Charles's approach. He carried a tray with lemonade and cookies, made especially for the small celebration that would take place that afternoon. His eyes, once known in the business world for their calculating coldness, now reflected a serenity that his associates barely recognized. "1 year today," said Charles, sitting next to Anna, "the day that changed our lives forever." The day they met at the restaurant had become a special date for both, the anniversary of the beginning of their improvised family. But for Charles and Anna, that day also represented something greater. It was the beginning of a transformation that went far beyond their personal worlds. The idea born from Anna's concern for other children had transformed into something concrete and powerful. "The children seem happy today. I think they're excited about the party," commented Anna, as she observed the new residents of the property. What was once just a lonely billionaire's mansion now housed the New Dawn Institute, a transitional home for children in vulnerable situations. The vast grounds that once served only to impress occasional visitors now echoed with children's laughter. Educators, doctors, and psychologists worked daily to ensure that each child received not just basic care, but the individualized attention necessary to heal invisible wounds. "They are happy because they have hope now," replied Charles. "Just as you taught me to have hope again." Charles's business empire continued to thrive, but his goals had changed drastically. A significant portion of his resources was now directed toward programs assisting vulnerable children. The restaurant where everything began had been transformed into a professional training center for young people without opportunities, offering courses in gastronomy, hospitality, and administration. "I never imagined I could help so many people," said Anna, observing a girl who reminded her very much of herself a year ago. "I thought I would be just another mouth to feed." Charles smiled, recognizing the deep wisdom his adoptive daughter demonstrated despite her young age. Anna had adapted surprisingly well to her new life, but never forgot her origins. Unlike many children who might want to erase a painful past, she embraced it as an essential part of who she was, using it as fuel for their shared mission. "You've taught me more than I could have imagined," replied Charles. "About compassion, about purpose, about what really matters." On the horizon, the first guests began to arrive for the celebration. Families who had adopted children through Charles and Anna's program, dedicated volunteers, and even some public figures who now supported the cause. Among them, walking shyly, was the young waiter who had shown kindness to Anna on that fateful day, now manager of the school restaurant. "Are you ready to receive the guests?" asked Charles, extending his hand to his daughter. Anna nodded, rising with the quiet confidence she had developed over the past year. Her transformation wasn't just physical, but deeply emotional and spiritual. The frightened girl who once scrubbed floors for food scraps now walked with her head held high, aware not only of her own worth, but of the potential for change that existed when someone simply cared enough to make a difference. "I'm ready," replied Anna, holding her father's hand. "We have much to celebrate and even more to accomplish." And together, father and daughter walked toward the future they had built, not just for themselves, but for hundreds of children who, like Anna, needed only a chance to shine. Did you like this story? Comment where you're from. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and check out the next one waiting for you here on screen. Don't forget to comment. I'll be waiting for you there.